Welcome to Rooted, Stories of Entrepreneurship and Agribusiness, a podcast from Colorado State University's Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics. I'm your host, Lauren Chenerides. I'm currently an assistant professor of agricultural business at Colorado State University, where I teach a course on agribusiness entrepreneurship. In this podcast series, we explore stories of how people across the food and agriculture industry identify problems, create solutions, and build or improve businesses that make an impact. What makes Rooted unique is that each episode is co-hosted by students in the agribusiness entrepreneurship course who bring their own curiosity and questions to the table. Their conversations with leaders across food and agriculture are a chance to learn, reflect, and share those insights with you, our audience of students, entrepreneurs, and change makers in food and agriculture. I appreciate your time and attention, and I'm excited to share these inspiring stories with you. Today, I'm joined by our student co-hosts, Genevieve and Brooklynn. Both are animal science majors and agricultural business minors, and our guest today is Julie Moore. Julie currently serves as Vice President of Operations at the Colorado Beef Council. For over 2 decades, she led the council's nutrition and education efforts, helping consumers, educators, and policymakers understand beef's role in nutrition and agriculture. She has designed statewide programs, coordinated the Colorado Beef Council's presence at major events like the National Western Stock Show, and partnered with educators through the Beef Grant Program. For her contributions to agriculture through public engagement, Julie was honored in 2023 with CSU's Impacts Through Partnership Award. Julie got her roots growing up on a diversified farm and ranch in Nebraska and holds degrees in food science, human nutrition, and meat science from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and Colorado State University. And Julie also has experience working in beef processing and product quality, which was a whole other line of your career, which hopefully we can get into more. But just welcome to the podcast, Julie, and we're really lucky to have you here. I'm going to turn it over to Genevieve for our first line of questions.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lauren, for introducing us. I was wanting to start off, Lauren kind of gave us an overview of who you are and what you do. But I was curious if you wouldn't mind giving us kind of a summary of your zigzag career path and how you ended up where you are today with the Colorado Beef Council.
Sure. I thought I was going to be a doctor. When I was a senior in high school and getting scholarships, the dean of the College of Agriculture of the University of Nebraska at Lincoln called me and said, "Hey, if you take an agriculture major, we have money for you." I'm like, "Oh, well then." I became pre-vet real quick because, the classes would match. And then University of Nebraska at Lincoln is broken into 2 parts of campus. And there's really like an ag campus, and then there's we called it city campus. And I lived on city campus thinking that's where a doctor should be. And I had a horrible roommate situation and almost quit college. So at semester, I moved to ag campus because I did grow up in a little town of, there now is 500 people there. When I was there, it was still 600. No stoplights. And so being on ag campus was just more for me. And with that, what am I going to do? That same dean, he's like, "Well, why don't you try food science?" I'm like, "Well, what's that?" My mom's a dietitian, so I knew that. I'm like, I'm going to go do that. Well, that would have taken me out of the college. And, of course, they want you to stay in your college. So I did food science, but I did a double major with human nutrition. And then I thought, I love food science, and I was going to be a sensory analyst. And a sensory analyst means you run taste panels. And that was the point where NutraSweet, the little blue packets, was really coming on. And I was going to run taste panels in Chicago for them. But to interview for those jobs, that was like in July. So here I am, a senior in college in May, thinking I should really practice interviewing. I practiced interviewing at Monfort, which is a beef packing plant, which is now the one in Greeley here is JBS. So that was owned by the Monfort family. So that's how it goes back. I went there, I practiced interviewed, turned down a job. They offered me another job. And I really thought about it. I thought, I can either wait till July and hope to get a job, or I could take this one in hand. So I took that one. So I was in the beef packing industry. I did quality and food safety, and I was the export supervisor. So I worked with all our export customers, did the tours for the Japanese and the Koreans and the Mexicans and the Canadians and anybody else who came to visit. From there, I realized, like, I don't really know anything about what I'm doing because I never even had a meats class. I looked to go to graduate school. And at that point, Colorado State there were two really up-and-coming, moving schools, and Colorado State won because I love Colorado. I did an internship in my nutrition side out in Boulder. I know it's Boulder, but that's where I learned to love Colorado, not Boulder, just Colorado. So I came here and did my master's in meat science. Then I worked from here. I went to work in the Burger King system, a supplier of burgers. So I was in Virginia, and we made 6 million Whoppers a week at my facility back in the 90s, and they expanded after I left, and they're closed now. And part of that is trying to transport meat safely that far. You've got those extra days of transportation. Yeah. And so anyway, they tried. So then I went, and then meanwhile I found love and moved back to Colorado, again, where I love. And I worked for the Colorado Restaurant Association, kind of temporary, not sure what I was doing. And then I started the Colorado Beef Council, and I've been there 28 and a half years.
Amazing.
Which nobody will do in this classroom, again, because that's just not what we do. But I had an amazing boss who was very flexible. And when I started, I had no kids. And at this point, I'm still there, and my kids are out of college. And so there were just times I'm like, okay, I got a parent. And he's like, okay, get your work done. And really, it was because he learned that people that come from agriculture they have a work ethic. They'll get their job done. It doesn't matter if it's 8 to 5, you're going to get the job done. And so he was very flexible with me. Okay, that's a big zigzag.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I've been to the Beef Council.
So much experience, though, too, and just how opportunistic you were along the way of just being resourceful, using, and learning along the way of what you needed to get to the next step.
Well, and I think it goes a long way to show, especially for, if we're talking about college students, I think a lot of people could agree that it's kind of difficult to not know what you want to do. And I think a lot of people feel guilty about that. And I think you are a great example of sometimes you just have to go with the flow and figure out what works for you. And I think a lot of people have a hard time finding that work-life balance. And I find it really admirable that you're able to find a job that you love, but also live in a place that you love with the person you love. A lot of that time it comes so easy, but hard work really pays off.
It does, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you giving us that overview. I wanted, in previous discussions in our meetings that we had touched on the topic of you introducing the beef industry into other industries throughout our society. And I was curious as to kind of what started to pique your interest into bringing beef into those new places.
So with my background, and I'm starting at the Beef Council, and you're kind of filling, anytime you take a job, you're kind of filling shoes, but then you also want to bring your own shoes and make it bigger and better. And not always bigger, but just do better. And so at that point, when I started the Beef Council, it was really about nutrition, and the beef world was not really favorable because at that point that was the no fat, that was the cholesterol crisis, that was all those things. And so I'm thinking, what can I do and where can I be to help? Some of those places, like I was reading the final reports of what we had paid for in the past, and I reached out to someone who was like the primary investigator on it, and I'm like, okay, what can I do and where should I be? He's like, well, you should really go to this meeting. And so I was on the Colorado State wide Heart and Stroke Task Force. So, yeah, heart and stroke.
Unexpected.
Yeah, because the rest of the task force was all like American Heart Association, physicians, hospitals, and then there's this beef girl. Well, it was important because lots of times throughout my career, and think about it as I talk today, it's like, what room was I in that you wouldn't have expected? And it's really just to see what other people are saying about you sometimes when it's an issues management kind of thing. So so Heart and Stroke was one of them. Then I also sat on American Heart Association committees. Education-wise, I went to the Colorado Math Teachers Conference. And how does beef fit? Well, the beef industry is a great to use for examples in math. I mean, if you think about the percentage of fat in a burger, or the percentage of a nutrient in beef, and at that point, the national program had an education system, or an education department, and they had videos and education kits that we shared, and we paid for. The Beef Checkoff paid for those education kits to start to teach more about beef. And so there I was at a math conference with, talking about percentage of fat in burgers and all these fun pictures and worksheets, and teachers are like, okay. So it's just places to go that you're sharing the word.
And to follow up on that, and you kind of touched on it, I was curious as when you're approaching, for example, the Heart and Stroke Association, does your approach to the two of those when you introduce the beef industry, is there, and it could be any other example too that you can think of, did those vary? Do you approach each situation differently? Is there kind of a common thing that you see between all of them that you use to help incorporate beef?
I mean, the common thing was nutrition. I mean, that's absolutely. But then it's always about your audience. Always, always, always know your audience. So with math teachers, it's like, okay, what can I do to help you teach more easily? Like giving you worksheets that are already made, and here's the answer key, and you can just give it to your kid. Or here's a cute video that they can watch and understand. So it's for that teacher. Nurses, it's more science. It might have been those nutrition research papers. And another one that I will always remember, I went to the Preventive Cardiac Nurses Association. Who even knew there was such a thing? But on the other hand, who knew there was a master's in meat science? When I tell people I have that, they're like, oh, really? Mm-hmm. I had so many people say, why are you here? I'm like, okay, your clients are going to eat beef. Help them eat it right. Mm-hmm. And then I had people say, oh, absolutely, thank you. Mm-hmm. Somebody from the South said, oh, yeah, my clients eat biscuits and gravy. And so instead of eating 3, I've got them eating 2. Mm-hmm. I'm like, right. So if they eat a steak, it doesn't have to be an 18-ounce. They can have 6 ounces, or they can have something else. So it's all about helping people understand how beef fits in their life.
And I'm just going to tie it real quick to something we cover in class, which is about gain creators, what we talked about this week, of knowing your audience and knowing that the more information they have about whatever that product or service is, the better they're able to see how their life can be improved, how you're creating value for the teacher, for the clinician to educate better, or in these two examples. So very entrepreneurial of you.
Oh, well, thanks.
Yes.
Interesting to touch on, especially in the beef industry, because I feel like it seems kind of out there to bring it to these different conferences. But I mean, from what I've experienced, a lot of people just don't know about beef. And it's not that it's a harmful thing, or it's scary, or it's super good for you or super bad for you. I mean, everything is good in moderation. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Everything that we consume has some sort of, with moderation, it's good. Spreading that education just about beef in general. I mean, I know that I have customers walk into my store every single day. They're asking for specific things, but sometimes they don't always know what they're asking for. You know what I mean? I have people come in and ask me, do you have grass-fed? Is it grain-fed? Is it does this have any antibiotics? Well, no beef has any antibiotics in it because they go through a whole period. So it's spreading that education of getting rid of the idea that beef is this harmful, scary thing in the way that we make it, when it's really not.
And it's hard because agriculture is so small. Mm-hmm. If we are less than 2% of everything, people just are not aware anymore. I mean, lots of times when I go to a talk, I'm like, who has a family member, grandparent, anybody who has been in agriculture, and even that's getting slimmer.
Well, I think we've had a move of recent generations, especially generational farms, not taking over, and I think there's just less interest in it because I think A lot of people are having issues with that, like you mentioned previously when we started, that work-life balance. A lot of people in agriculture have a hard time regulating when it's okay to stop and take a break and when to keep working. Well, that was great. I was just out of curiosity, what has been the most interesting / fun one for you to do? Like, what has been like, you left that convention or you left that, meeting and it was like, that was like really cool?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I don't know that I have a specific, but anytime somebody gets that aha moment, like, oh, now I understand. I was invited to Metro State University for several years to talk to their human nutrition class for the dietitians, the pre-dietitians as they were getting ready to do the next step. And because not everybody's going to be a dietitian. You have to take the exam. Like, everybody's not a lawyer. You've got to take the exam. And, like, what else could they do while they were waiting for the next time to take the exam? Or maybe they find it's not for them. And so then you can talk about, well, here's an opportunity, and here's something else, and here's something else. And they look at you like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, I think anytime somebody has that aha moment, yeah.
That's where it's rewarding.
It is.
Yeah, and I think, like, agriculture in general has so many avenues that are, like, not seen yet. And I think, we are such a small part of, this nation, but all in all, like, there are so many avenues that could potentially, like, spark somebody's interest, and you're like, that's an ag thing. Like, you would love being with the meat industry, and you didn't even know about it. Yes. So I think that's super, like, super beneficial.
Yeah. What piqued my interest when we, first met with you is the fact that, I mean, you're right, we're a very small percentage, but to be honest, we're in everything. And people don't realize it.
Yes.
So I was kind of like, I thought it was really cool to be able to touch on something like that.
I taught a class, or I was a guest speaker in a class once, and at the end, it was a career class, and at the end, I'm like, okay, challenge me. Give me a job, and I'll tell you how it's tied to agriculture. Think of water law. Yeah. So if you want to be a lawyer, great. Do you know how important water law is in this state? Oh my gracious, So that was kind of fun because the students, I'm like, challenge me, and it is. Agriculture's everywhere.
Yeah. And even, on my end, my research area focuses on the retail sector. Where people buy food, and, and you're talking about some of these marketing concepts. So agriculture spans not only production, but even like post-consumer activities, recycling, all this stuff goes back to ag and connects back to ag.
Yeah, it's funny, like you mentioned the retail. I was, thinking about, I saw a video the other day with Kim, who does the marketing for Five Rivers, who came to visit us. There was a video on my feed of her that pulled up, and I was like, oh, I know that lady. And, she touched on, I think a lot of people are focused on, like, the grass versus grain finish. And she was touching on the fact that right now there's a really big movement for local beef compared to grocery, mass production beef. And I loved her take on it. She was able to kind of promote her business and tell people as to why buying from the grocery store isn't scary. But she also gave reasons as to why buying local is good. Because I know I work for the local industry. I'm working to keep our beef production in a local area, and the furthest our beef goes from our consumers is an hour and a half to the processing. And I see a lot of benefits into that. But I have a lot of customers who come in and they're like, oh, I would never buy from a grocery store. And I'm like, okay, well, I appreciate your guys' support and what you believe in, because everybody has different beliefs, but why wouldn't you buy from a grocery store? Like, thinking of those, it goes far deep into everybody's everyday life, you know what I mean? And it's so complicated.
And I'm curious, Julie, how have you navigated those conversations?
Oh, absolutely.
And how do you approach that?
The Beef Council support represents everyone, because everyone pays the check off. And so lots of times I'll start with, all right, who in the room likes conventional, or who likes grain-fed, who likes grass-fed, and it's good. Everybody can have their own choice. That's the benefit of the beef industry. I mean, we will grow whatever it is you want, and it's whatever you can afford for a lot of people, because even though you want it, you may not be able to afford it.
So glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, but then I go to the facts, absolutely, because all beef is safe. It's all inspected by USDA. It's all out there. And which part you like, if it's about antibiotics, well, let me make sure you know the truth behind that. If it's about grass-fed versus grain-fed because of the omega-3s, well, let's talk about that. I don't care if you're a vegetarian. If you're doing it for reasons that you have accurate information, so be it. I'm not going to change your mind, and I'm just happy to have the conversation. It's all about the conversation.
Well, and I think all these different parts of the industry exist for a reason. You know, if they didn't have consumers or people who believed in them, they wouldn't be here. You know what I mean? So I think there's all good reasons for different parts of the industry, and I have respect for anybody's decision, whether it's grass-fed or grain-fed, whether it's organic or conventional, or whether it's, you know, large scale or local. It's, you know, all of that's, you know, I think, and I touched on this in that paper that I wrote about organic farming. I think what comes down to it is the education behind it. I think everybody needs to respect everybody's decision, but I think it's also important to make sure that decision is based off of knowledge and not as what you're just listening from a 5-second video.
And on that, how do you stay current with, you know, some of the new research that's coming out, or what do you read? What kind of fills your inbox in terms of or your library queue?
Well, I probably have 3 or 4 e-newsletters that I read the headlines like we all do, and then after we read the headline, if there's something that piques my interest, I go deeper. They're usually meat industry, and I have a daily food safety one that I still read, because food safety was part of my core when I was at the packing plant and when I was at Burger King. You know, it was all about food safety. So I sit on a planning committee for the Rocky Mountain Food Safety Conference, and I started that because back there was an incident with Jack in the Box. It was huge. Somebody died. That was like the beginning of the worries about beef and food safety. You know, sometimes you just got to be in the room and help them, help them find good speakers. Because my very first conference, I had Bill Marler, the guy who litigated Jack in the Box, was there, and I had the opportunity to listen to him rant about the beef industry, and I thought, oh my word, I'm staying here and I'm going to join the planning committee. So that alone was interesting. And now Bill Marler says, the beef industry has gotten so much better, I have no business from them. I mean, he, as a lawyer, he's not litigating beef anymore. He's litigating other things. And so, to me, that's a huge compliment to the industry. Part of working for the Beef Checkoff, well, and you don't even have to, if you're working in an industry, they're supplying you with information because they want you to be knowledgeable. And I have been given the latitude to do those kinds of things and read more or go to meetings, or, you know, you just have, there's so much more, which sometimes is overwhelming, than like when I first started. So it's pretty easy to stay up on it, but you also need to stay up on it.
So I wanted to kind of touch back on, you know, just the Colorado Beef Council in general, and you mentioned you've been with them for, you know, almost 30 years now. In what ways has the Colorado Beef Council in particular allowed you to pursue, like, this interest, like pursue the opportunity to spread information?
Well, the bonus is that's our job.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because that's what the checkoff does. We there's some things we can't do, but we can absolutely do promotion and marketing and information and education. And I has been given the ability to, like, pick and choose. Like, okay, I think we need to be at the math teachers, and this is why. They've given us this great kit. This is the best way to spread it. Or this is the new nutrition information. We know that with, like, heart and stroke, we know that medical students, and it's still true today, they may get like 2 hours of nutrition information, not even like take a test, per year. And yet it's your doctor you sit down and talk to, and they're telling you, do this, don't do that. You know, even honestly, just yesterday, a rancher who had sat on our board texted me and said, okay, Julie, and this person is going through some cancer, and their pre-surgery meal regime was no plant forward only plant proteins. And so, and I'm like, she's like, I wasn't happy about that. What do you have? And so, we can go to that research and we can supply other people with that information so that they can go talk to their doctors. I mean, one of my favorite dietitians is here in Fort Collins, and she's at a cardiac rehab, and she loves the materials that the beef industry has created because in Fort Collins, Colorado, with all these cattle around, your patients are gonna eat beef. Which one? You can pick the leaner cuts versus a fattier cut. There are ways to make it work. Here's some recipes, and so she would always call. So yeah, there are absolutely ways to talk about beef, whether it's the industry, the cattle, the nutrition, just to help people understand.
Yeah. And I think what you said too is that what people are going to do. So just give them the information to have them make the decision in the most informed way.
Yeah, because I know we appreciate, and this is how Julie knows Nicole, who I work for. I mean, the Colorado Beef Council, and Julie in particular, provides us with informative stuff for free just to hand out. Stickers, booklets, pamphlets, all of that. And we make an effort to supply it to every single, even if they're a recurring customer, we throw always like some sort of little snippet or information about beef into like their little bag when we send them off to go home. And a lot of those is like the nutritional ones that you've touched on. It has like a lot of information on, gives you like a fun little recipe to, cook, but then it also gives like nutritional information about the beef that that you buy and just consume. Because it's shocking to me that, you mentioned that they don't have a huge nutritional education, because I feel like that's so important, especially today. I feel like in America in particular, I just feel like nutrition should be important.
In the medical education.
Yeah.
Well, and I think with beef, and I can't speak for other, sometimes people want the permission to eat it.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, this is, no, it's okay. Here's how you do it. And so it's that permission. And so just giving them some information.
So, we were kind of talking about maybe some of the challenges earlier in this podcast that you may have faced in your work. Did you face any in the beef industry that you didn't typically have? And what was like the biggest one that you had to overcome, would you say?
Professionally, one of the times where my stomach just clenched and I'm like, ooh, what do I do? Was I was appointed to the Colorado Farm to School Task Force by the Commissioner of Ag. And because beef and cattle is a huge part of Colorado agriculture, number one, actually. So I go to my first meeting. We're all there. Everybody's appointed by somebody, Department of Ed, Department of Ag, Department something else. And we're introducing ourselves, and we're starting to talk. And a person in the room said, well, I don't think you should be there.
Wow.
You're not a rancher. You're not a real rancher. And I'm like, well, I did grow up on a ranch, and I have worked in the industry a long time, and I represent the ranchers, and I talk to them on a daily basis. Well, that doesn't count. That isn't good enough. And lucky for me, it was a point in my career where I had cheerleaders. I had other people in the room who said, no, Julie was appointed, and when I've worked with Julie, she's never been biased. She's always tried to look at all sides, and that is, honestly, that's one of my superpowers, is I'm a really good devil's advocate. And so I always tell people, don't take it personally, because I'm just good at picking at things and trying to make it better. And so lucky for me, that happened. Now, that was a tough meeting because you're sitting across the table from someone who says you shouldn't be here. And that person was prominent and well known and kind of had power. But over the years, we worked together on the same task force for many years, and we just learned to appreciate each other's skills and to agree to disagree. Because that's all you could do.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So that one was probably the hardest, where then you just have to sit there and be in that room and in that uncomfortable situation.
Yeah, I think something just to pull out of that is like cheerleaders in your life are so crucial.
Yeah.
Like in all avenues of life, like it is so important to have those people to build you up and keep you going on what you're passionate about.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what all the, networking is about. Being part of either an internship, an externship, your student clubs, whatever it is, however you have the opportunity to network, that's really how it happens.
Yeah. On that, like, maybe not that challenge, but challenges that you've had, did it ever make you feel like you didn't want to keep going, or like how did you push through that and like really, you know, keep going?
Oh, yeah. You know, I think it always goes back to my love and passion for the beef industry. And there have been tough times, absolutely, not even at the Beef Council. Like when I was in Virginia working the Burger King system, I was far away from everybody. I had no cheerleaders. I was in a very southern culture. I was female, imported, white management, and I was not loved by any means. And so that was a tough time, but I also cared that my job was to make sure people were safe, and that Burger King could sell burgers, and there wasn't a big recall. There wasn't a Jack in the Box for Burger King. And so you just kind of push through. But I did move back to Colorado and didn't stay there. So, you know, you do what you can while you can.
Right.
And then move back to Colorado.
And then move back to Colorado, yes.
Adapting.
Yes. Looking back at some of the opportunities you've been given, are there any that you wish you wouldn't have acted on or wish that you would have acted on, like both sides of the spectrum there?
Yeah, you know, and I just now thought of one that I wish I wouldn't have done. Think about words. Always think about your words. I helped write our newsletter. I did a headline, and we were talking about BQA, so beef quality assurance. We were talking about some of the things that BQA teaches so that it's not out there. So we don't have abscesses, so we don't have other problems, because as ranchers and producers, we can help with that. And so my headline was, would you eat this? Well, I got called out big time by a beef producer and said, what if someone else who's not in the industry looked at it and said, oh, the beef people wouldn't even eat what they make? You know, oh, I sunk. You know, but so that was one I wish I wouldn't have done. One I wish I'd done was when there was the controversy over the lean, finely trimmed lean, finely trimmed beef, also known as pink slime, if you remember pink slime. The media, Colorado media, was talking about, oh, that's just made with the meat off the floor. I'm like, no, it isn't. I have 3 years of experience in a plant like that where the meat comes from. It is not that. And I so wanted to be that voice for the industry, and I was advised not to. And smarter people in the world have said to me other times, don't break into jail. Now, don't make it worse than it is. If it's going to die, let it die on its own. Don't break into jail. And so that was one of those times where I was advised not to. But I so wanted to be on there and just correct that error.
Yeah. And we talk about this too, about, you know, the concept of failure. You know, it's life is all about, you know, trying things, maybe making mistakes, recovering from them, being resilient. It's one of the core concepts of, you know, being an entrepreneur, or even just being entrepreneurial minded in your own workplace. And so what, you know, on that note, what sort of, you have resources, you have cheerleaders, you have support. What are other things that you lean on in those times where you're, you know, maybe recovering from a wrongly written headline, or, you know, like your other example of maybe deciding to hold back, to not write something? So what other kind of, I would say, advice or tools can you draw from in those moments?
And those times are when your network is imperative. I mean, because for a while there, lots of things I wrote or didn't want to write because I was scared to write again. You know, I made sure other people read them. And made sure I got other advice from those people. Times where I wish I would have, I wasn't as, I think I became a better advocate even for myself. For the times where I think we really should stand up and we should do things. And so you have to weigh those. It's a tough one. And some people are quick to jump and then you regret what you say. Some people are slower and like to think about it. And I'm a thinker. And so, but sometimes you can't think too long either, or the opportunity's gone.
Knowing how other minds work, I mean, I think comes with experience too, just by working with a variety of people that some do really want to act fast and some really need to take their time and think things over and weighing that against, are you going to miss an opportunity?
Yeah.
Especially when you're working for an organization that is the forefront and the voice for so many other, producers out there.
Do you have any advice that you would give, our listeners or anybody in the food and agribusiness kind of sector from your life, from, really what you've kind of already touched on, but any direct advice you could give?
I would say make sure you're up on the topics or issues. So those daily e-newsletters, even if you're reading the headlines, you at least know what's going on and you know where to go back. The network. And because there'll be a time where you may not want to do what you're doing anymore, and by networking, you're just going to see all the other opportunities that are out there, and they'll be able to help you see where you can go and what other opportunities might be.
That's so great. Such great advice. And to kind of round us out for today, I want to ask you a question here of what does being rooted in your work mean to you?
Rooted in my work is having a passion. Absolutely having a passion for what you're doing. And I know sometimes it's hard to have a passion if you're a salesperson for a shoot or fencing, but you do have that passion for what it's doing, what it's helping, whether it's helping animals, whether it's helping make it easier for people. And so you have to find the part of your job, world, volunteer program that is your passion. And the other part of Rooted was, and honestly, my mom helped me with this. Rooted is because that was part of my background, and it's always been my passion because I grew up on a ranch and I went to college and I learned about food and agriculture, and so that's just kind of I just love that part of it. I mean, what other job can I live in Denver and talk to ranchers? Because that was where I ended up, and we don't always know where we're going to end up, and so finding the best thing for you is important.
I love that. That's so great. Well, Julie, it's been such a pleasure getting a chance to get to know you better, get to know about your history, Colorado Beef Council, all the things, and for our student co-hosts. Really grateful to have you here with us, and to everyone else listening and tuning in. So